Listen, I want to introduce our next speaker. Really, this whole morning, you're going to hear only from brothers that are in the winning circle. Amen? This is just like, if you don't know what it is, you're going to find out in a minute. But this brother and I, we actually work together every single week to help men to heal and to win in what matters. And his story is a powerful one. I won't tell you what his story is. I won't tell you what his background is, but I will do the best I can in my somewhat of a Haitian adjacent way. Now, I said I'm Haitian adjacent. Did you hear what I said? The streets are saying that I am Haitian. I mean, that's what the streets are saying. I mean, we're still trying to figure that out. But this is my brother. Y'all put your hands together for another winning circle brother, Vladimir Louissaint.
Tell us who you running with. 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 Tell us who you. Tell the truth to shame the devil. Shame the devil. Tell the truth to shame the devil. Shame the devil. Tell the truth to shame the devil. The shame the devil. Tell the truth to shame the devil.
Man. Can I get another yeah? Now, before we go any further, this is what I want to do. I want to give a man his flowers while he's still alive. Can somebody say that? So can y'all get on your feet and give a big old men's winning circle yeah for Dr. Myron Edmonds, please? Yeah. Now, don't get confused. I work with Myron every week, so I know his bio like nobody else does, right? Well, maybe. I didn't get you on your feet so you can praise his accomplishments. I wanted you to acknowledge his story. And this is why I say this. Because everybody here has got a story. Now, with Myron, when I got introduced to Myron, I wasn't looking at, oh man, this guy's successful. He's been pastoring over 20 years. He's got this nice house. We get so distracted as men, and we get so entrenched in what people got, and we get impressed with that. But what kept me with Myron, what drew me to him, was his story. My man was transparent. I had never heard a man say, I struggled with porn before. And when he said that, I was like, ooh, he's talking to me. Ooh. Now, let me say something. Where my young fat dudes in the house? Right over here. Give him a yeah. Now, LeBron fans, raise your hand. Anybody a LeBron fan? Now, just shout it out. Who here knows what LeBron averages in stats every single game? Just shout it out. 30. How many rebounds? How many minutes? Now, here's what I want you to see. Isn't it funny how most of us in this room were in remedial math in high school, but somehow we grew up to be statisticians when it came to sports, but we can't say anything about our story. We can name everybody's stats, but we can't talk about our lives. So here's what I'm going to do. I don't have a lot of time. I'm going to tell you a story. Somebody look at your neighbor and say, story. I'm going to tell you a story. And my hope and prayer is that by the end of it, you'll see that being free and to win matters is directly correlated to your understanding and mastery of your story. Somebody look at your neighbor and say, I got a story. And it can get heavy, but there's more. Okay. So I want to bring you back to May 20th of 1992. Now, this story is about a little immigrant woman who stands 5'3", and she's just been here for only 3 years. Okay. Immigrates to this country with a 4-year-old boy. 1992, she had conceived an infant just a year before. Now, she's home in her apartment by herself. She got no family up here. She's in her apartment, and she has her little infant child in the crib. Now, check this. She's doing what she got to do. She's washing dishes. She's doing something. And she periodically go and check on the baby in the crib to make sure that the baby was okay. And so one day she goes in, on this day, she goes in and she looks into the crib and she sees the blankets that she had laid on the side of the crib were now on the baby's face. So she goes into the crib, and she's shocked now. She looks in, and she pulls the blanket back. And to her horror, the baby is not breathing. Now, this lady, let's call her Marie. Marie don't speak any English. She just got here. And in a split second, she gets the flashbacks to only 2 years prior when she had another child that she didn't know was in. She was carrying a fetus that she didn't know was with her. And she had gotten diagnostic testing, x-rays and everything. When she found out she was pregnant, she had to make the painful decision to terminate the pregnancy. So when she sees her baby in the crib not breathing, she said, Lord, you gonna do this to me again? And so without even thinking about it, her life is flashing before her eyes. She goes into the street and she starts knocking on doors. And she starts pleading, saying, help, my baby's dying, he's not breathing. I don't even know if she was speaking English, but she was saying, I need help. She's just banging on doors, hoping that somebody would hear her prayer and her screams. There was a dance school and a studio right across the street from where she lived. And these 18, 19, 20-year-olds something, like y'all over here, they come pouring out, and they start laying hands on her, and they start hearing her cry. And then the person who lived right next door to her opens his door and says, come and get the baby inside here. We're going to work on him. And without even knowing, that motherly instinct kicks in. And she starts affixing her mouth to his nose. And she starts just pulling. And she starts pulling. And the baby began to breathe. And she said, Lord, I'm going to give you praise for all my life. And I promise you, because I know that this pregnancy was not a reason for me to give up, that you gave his life. So I'm going to tell this story. So when that child got older, she said, son, I need you to tell this story. I want you to make me a promise. I want you to make me a promise to tell this story because I wrote this story in my English learning class. I wrote it in 2 languages. I wrote it in French and I wrote it in English. And I need you to promise me that one day you'll tell my story. And the child was like, oh, okay. So brothers, I am so happy to say that today on this day, May 2nd of 2026, that little boy, whose name was Vladimir Louissaint, grew up and told his story. Now watch this. When you hear a story like that, mind you, my mother was married. That's something that would bring people together. If it don't break your relationship, a near loss of a child and another loss of a child to bring your relationship together, right? Who here has been through some stuff in their family? Who here has almost lost somebody close to them, and you had a reason to quit, but you stayed together and it made you stronger? Can somebody say, yeah, yeah? I grew up watching shows like The Huxtables. If this resonates with you and you grew up watching this, let me get a yeah after everyone, right? I grew up watching families like The Huxtables. Who here grew up watching The Huxtables? Who here grew up watching The Winslows? Who here grew up watching The Bankses? I used to watch these shows, and I'm like, why don't my family look like that? Let me paint the scene for you. My mother we had a 2-story apartment in Cambridge, Massachusetts. My mother slept on the floor. My father slept in his room. My brother slept in his room. And I shared a bed with my daddy. That was the reality of our lives. And so one day I was like, yo, Mom, what's going on? Because aside from what the scene was painted as, every time my mom and my dad spoke together, it was only through vitriol and anger and resentment and fighting, police being called, social workers coming to the house. I'm telling you, this is not the Huxtable dream that I thought was supposed to be my reality. And so one day I asked my mom, I said, Mama, I said, Mama, why do you and Daddy argue so much? Y'all don't sleep in the same room. Y'all don't, what's going on? And she said, son, let me tell you something. When I conceived you, when your daddy knew, he flipped the script. Once I told him that I was pregnant with you, he did not want you to live. He said, I don't want no more babies. I don't want no more responsibility. Now, back then, I didn't know what my dad's story was. But all I knew is that when my mom gave me an honest answer to an honest question, the freedom that I was supposed to get from that narrative that God wanted me to live, that he saved me from the clutches of death to give me life so I could live and do something special, all of that was taken away from me in an instant. Because now the narrative went from I was saved and I was favored to I was unwanted. Who here has ever felt like they were unwanted? Raise your hand. The reason why men act out like Nate was saying, the reason why so many men crash out so heavily is because they are crashing out of a feeling of being unwanted. And so from that moment on, I said, all right, what am I supposed to do with this? I was unwanted. So I grew up being the overachiever. Anybody here take a Saboteur's assessment? If you don't know what it is, get to know what it is before you leave here, because it will change your life. I was unwanted. So everything that I did out of gaining permission. Y'all heard what Pastor Cal said yesterday. Gaining permission. I needed permission from my father to live my life. I needed him to know that I was worth not aborting, that he was wrong. I needed to prove him wrong, but also I needed to prove my mom right because she saved my life. Overachiever. Underachiever. And so where did this take me? My parents finally left. My mom finally left my dad on a hot summer afternoon in July. And when I say left, I really meant escape. Somebody say escape. I mean, shoot. My father came home from his lunch break and saw everything packed up and everybody in the car. And he said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm leaving." It was one of the worst days of my life. And so when my parents finally split, eventually I go to live with my dad. One day, I was 15. And I'm arguing with my mom about something. And she says, I'm like, yo, I need to go down the street, get me some Skittles. Get out of this environment. And she says, boy, if you leave, don't bother coming back. And so you know what I said? Remember, watch this. The narrative was I was unwanted, so you don't want me either now? I'm out. And guess where who wants to guess where I went to? I went right to my daddy's house. He opened the doors and he's like, hey man, I'm gonna get you a Gateway computer. Don't miss that. They don't make those no more. And for a good reason. He's like, hey man, come here. You can get your own room. I don't have to live in the projects anymore. I don't have to share 25 square feet with my brother anymore. I don't have to live in a hot projects on the 3rd floor. I don't have to do that no more. My man's offering me a computer. He's offering me my own room, freedom. He don't care what I do. He just cares that I'm on his side. I don't think y'all hear me. My dad needed an ally. But what I was searching for wasn't an ally. I was searching for permission to live. And so eventually one day, my mom and I not talking, my brother and I not talking. I'm estranged from my family. And one day I come home and I say, hey, yo, Daddy, why didn't you want me? His first response was, who told you that? I said, don't matter who told me that. Why didn't you want me? Is it true? And his silence spoke volumes. And so I left. I decided one day, it was snowing outside. I was on the wrestling team. Anybody wrestling here? So you know you gotta walk with your bag everywhere, man. So I'm like, listen, I'm gonna take my little duffel bag. I'm gonna go back to my daddy's house. It's a snowstorm. It's a blizzard going on. I'm walking in there with my little jacket. I'm stuffing my bag. My dad opens the door, and I see a look on his face that I've never seen before. Now, when my father used to get angry in the house, dysregulated, he had a vein on his forehead that was like as big as the snake that was in the Garden of Eden. And so, but this was different this time, right? Because my father was re-experiencing abandonment through me. And so I just came to get my stuff. I'm like, yo, I'm just here to get my gear and my Xbox 360 so I can play SmackDown versus Raw 2007. And so my father looks at me and he says, I know you're leaving and I don't care. I never loved you. I don't need you. Does somebody feel me in this room? You and your brother, your mom, I hope you guys die. Now, of course, you know I'm a teenager, right? So I'm like, you tripping, boy. Good luck with that. But on the inside, I was dead. Because the man that I needed permission to be myself confirmed the very thing that I was fearful of. Now, let me fast forward, because overachieving leads men to some dangerous places. Anybody say amen? I wanted to achieve, and I still needed permission to be free. So I went on, I graduated from high school, I graduated from college, I went to the state police. Anybody get stopped by a state trooper lately? Ever. It's some scary stuff. You got to compartmentalize to do that job. And I didn't want to do that job because I was so great at it. I wanted to do that job because I needed control and I needed permission. But what I realized at the state police was that I wasn't free because the little boy in me still needed validation from a man who was no longer in my life. And so my personality was taken in all these different ways. If you can perform, if you can achieve, if you can control, then you'll be free. Anybody ever fall for that trap? But my mental health, you heard a lot of talks about mental health. Why do men crash out? It's because I was achieving my way out of everything that I could, but you will never achieve your way out of a healing. Now, 2022, I'd had just about enough. Here I am in a job with people that don't look like me. They talk about things that I don't understand. They're looking at me like I'm here to take their spot. And back then, the state police was only about 7% black people. Do with that what you may. But I was lost. Let me tell you something. I woke up one day, and I was so beaten down by the pressure of trying to give myself permission, trying to get it from my daddy, trying to be the rock from my mom, being the only one in my family to move anybody forward. I was tired. And I go to work one day, and nothing can reduce it. So watch this. There was nothing else for me to do but end the suffering. Somebody say it's about to get heavy. But there's more. I found myself staring down the barrel of a .45 Smith & Wesson pistol. And I asked myself, Lord, if I just do this thing right now, can I stop hurting? Can I stop being a fake? Can I stop being a phony? What my daddy thinks about me is not going to matter anymore. It's all over. That's what led me to the winning circle. Because I had to confess my heart for one time. Now, I went home and I told my wife, and I didn't even tell my wife anything. I walked in, I realized what had happened, and I'm sobbing in my cruiser. I'm sitting in my garage and I'm thinking, man, I still got to get a happy face on. And walk in and tell my wife that everything's going to be all right, sweetie. We are providers, right? And sometimes I heard somebody said that we should not cry in front of our wives, and I was in agreement with that. But I had no other choice because all she said was, "How was your day, Bunny?" And I wept. And I cried. And I pled. And I said, I don't know how to live anymore, babe. This is what happened. I almost took my life. You wouldn't have known about it. And the ironic part about it is nobody would have seen it coming. So then when my boy Franz, who's somewhere in this room, said, hey, listen, man, come to the winning circle. They're doing these calls on Sundays. And you can learn about yourself. Listen, I know you're in a vulnerable position right now. But what I'm telling you is you need to be surrounded by men. You need to be surrounded by community. You need to let God lay hands on you, son, because if you don't, it's over. And watch this. In 2022, in March, I decide to put my faith in God one last time. And I come to this conference, and I meet this man, and the very thing he's talking about, I don't talk about my dad, but the very thing he was talking about in the conference was what? The father wound. And I had been hemorrhaging father wounds my whole life. If you don't deal with the wounds and you're bleeding out, by the time you crash out, you'd already bled out already. And so the challenge at the end of this conference was to call our daddies and tell them we forgive them. Ooh, a lot of y'all were in that room. There was nary a dry eye in that room. And I'm sitting there in my seat saying, Myron, how you going to ask me to do something like that? Why does he deserve the forgiveness? He don't deserve it. He don't even want me. But he said, you call your dad, you forgive him, you tell him he did all that he could. And I don't want you to miss this, okay? The same way that those people stood in the gap for my mother when she was pleading for my life to be saved, the men's winning circle stood in the gap for me. And so I called my dad, or I texted him and I said, Daddy, I did exactly what Myron said. I'm just going to be honest. I ain't going to put no nuances on it. I just said, this is what Myron didn't tell me to tell you this, but I'm just going to say it. You know what my dad said? He said, son, I never knew I belonged anywhere. I didn't think I belonged in your life. But thank you. Oh, man. I was expecting my man to be like, what are you talking about? You ain't got nothing to forgive me for. If anything, I should forgive you. He showed me his humanity right there. But don't miss what I'm about to tell you. The forgiveness is not a pardon, because a pardon removes the penalty. Forgiveness heals the damage. So what happened in that moment was the forgiveness gave me the clarity. The clarity removed the need for permission and renewed my vision for the life that God set out for me to live. Now, this is where it's going to get crazy, because, mind you, I told you, there was no pardon for my father. I could not forgive. I could forgive, but I could not forget everything that has happened. I still got to live with that. You're going to have to live with the wounds and the scars, but that doesn't mean the scars have to rule your life. And I told my dad, and I told myself when I left that house in 2007 when he was cussing me out, I said, I will never be like this man. Somebody raise your hand if you've ever said to yourself or somebody else, I ain't never going to be like my daddy. I'm going to be somebody different. What I didn't know, and what I haven't told you, is that little boy that my mom immigrated to the United States with at 4 years old from Haiti was my older brother, Serge. And now Serge was not even in my dad's stratosphere. He didn't treat him like a human being. I would watch him emasculate him, call him a sissy, call him all these things. And my brother was just quiet and mute. And we all just thought it was trauma. But guess what? When in 2023, when I found myself in crisis again, my son was just born, and I was dealing with depression, and there was no amount of therapy that would help. I called Darian class, and I said, I'm in trouble. I need prayer. I need help. I need to go back to this thing. I need to do it again. And I was looking for a solution, because I'm like, something's got to be up here. So I decided to finally go to the doctor and get a diagnosis. And what I was diagnosed with was with ADHD and clinical depression. But watch this. In order to get that diagnosis, I had to tell them that I had somebody in my life. Now, if you've ever gotten a screening, you got to get a screening from somebody that lives with you. You got to get a screening with somebody who has known you for a long time, and you got to do one yourself. Now, y'all know how Caribbean mothers are. If I went to my mom and said, Mom, I think I have ADHD, man. I'm struggling. Can you help me with this? Oh! What ADHD? No. Baby, you just need to pray more. If you went to church, you have no ADHD. What about me? What about me, eh? So instead of my mom or my parent, I had a school teacher that I had from kindergarten who knew me since kindergarten, but guess what? She also knew my brother. And so when I asked her, hey, do you remember if I had little difficulties at school? She's like, oh, yeah, you definitely had ADHD, boy. You would never sit still, and you can't stop talking. But your brother, I remember your brother. He was diagnosed, and he got services. I said, diagnosed with what? Ain't nobody tell me he got diagnosed with. She said, I'm pretty sure he's the only person or the first person in the district to get diagnosed with autism and didn't have to leave the school to get his services. And I fell to the floor, and I cried out of anger. Because the whole life I'm looking at my brother like he's an alien instead of understanding who his heart was, who he was. And here I was, I just missed this. He's my brother, and I didn't know this. But watch what God does with forgiveness. The forgiveness was the first part. I had to forgive my dad to understand him. You're going to have to forgive the people, not pardon them, but you need to understand them. Now, I want to bring you now to the current day. A few weeks ago, my wife and I took our 3-year-old son, Fidel. We call him Lito. We took him to a psychologist. And that psychologist was looking at his behaviors and they were evaluating him for something. Because we've known that he's got a lot of energy like your boy, but something else is going on there. And I'm like, of course, my man got ADHD. And when she said, yeah, so we're seeing emerging signs of ADHD, but we're also seeing emerging signs of autism 1. And I said I was never going to be like my dad, but yet here I stand in his shoes with my firstborn son, with the same diagnosis, with the same prognosis, with the same problem. It's not a problem, but with the same exact story. As much as I didn't want to be like my dad, here I am standing in the same exact space. I talked about standing in the gap and understanding your story. So I want you guys to get to your feet right now. And I want you to close your eyes. Give yourself a little room. You're at this conference because there's something that happened before and there's something that will happen later. You are standing in the gap right now. I'm looking at the matrices of my life. And you may be looking at the matrices of your life, and you're seeing exactly where you stood and where you have to go. And I'm telling you, and I'm going to encourage you right now, where you can, as you can, take a small step forward. You are now standing in the gap between what was and what is yet to come. Now, I want you to take this a step further. Without even opening up your eyes, I want you to reach beside you. And don't stop reaching until you touch somebody. Don't stop reaching until you touch somebody. Once you touch that person, grab them. Grab them like you go into battle. Grab them like you go into battle. Grab them like you're going to pray on them. You are in the matrices of your life. And you're at this conference because you need a breakthrough. And a wise man told me that in order for a breakthrough to happen, at first there must be a breaking. And right now, by standing in the gap, you are breaking a generational curse. You are looking at what has happened and what is yet to come. And I'm here to tell you that the man that is next to you, the hands that you are holding, are going to stand in the gap with you. That is how you heal what has happened and make room for the grace and mercy of God for what is yet to come. You are the generational harbinger. You are going to be the difference, and everything that rides on your bloodline and everything that's going to happen in your family is going to happen with the man standing right next to you. So I want you to give that man a hug. I want you to let it go, and I want you to thank him for standing in the gap with you. You don't have to go through it alone. You don't have to stand through it alone, because you are standing between what has happened and what is yet to come. God bless you.
Winning is a contract, don't ever forget that. Losing is a setback, you can learn a lot though. It's all about the clock though. Win, lose, or draw, the game never stops though. Worry about the critics or the analytics, this ain't something you play.